Hey, how you doing? Welcome to my own personal top 40 of 1980. As with all my top 40s, if you've been watching, I've done top 40s from 1970 to 1979. All the songs have to enter the UK top 40 in the year in question. Now, this was the very, very first episode I did, but it started life as a 1980 music documentary. But that would have been far more time consuming, so I did a top 40 of 1980. And then I got carried away and did one for every year from 1970 to 1991. Now, the 80s was my time, that's when I was a kid, so I'm a lot more familiar with music from the 80s than I am with music from the 70s. So there are bonus playlists from the 80s, basically 80 extra tracks from 1980, 81 from 1981, 82 from 1982, you get it. But they're also charting songs. All of those songs in the extra playlist charted. But there's also my extras playlist, is very confusing, which is songs that didn't enter the UK top 40, album tracks or songs from other territories. But it's more difficult to do that in the 80s because Brazilian music was a lot worse in the 80s, as was reggae. So, let's crack on. At number 40, John Lennon, just like starting over, spent a week at number 1 in December for obvious reasons. At 39, Randy Crawford, One Day I'll Fly Away, spent 2 weeks at number 2 in September and October of 1980. At 38, Stevie Wonder, Master Blaster, Jammin', spent a week at number 2 in October of 1980. At 37, Peter Gabriel, Games Without Frontiers, spent a week at number 4 in March of 1980. And at 36, Roxy Music, Over You, spent a week at number 5 in June of 1980. 35, The Specials, Stereotype, spent a week at number 6 in October of 1980. At number 34, Motorhead, Ace of Spades, spent 2 weeks at 15 in November of 1980. At 33, Elvis Costello and the Attractions, High Fidelity, spent a week at number 30 in April and May of 1980. 32, Joy Division, Love Will Tear Us Apart, spent a week at 13 in July and August of 1980. At 31, Genesis, Turn It On Again, spent a week at number 8 in April, April of 1980. Into the top 30. Number 30, Susie and the Banshees, Happy House, spent a week at 17 in April of 1980. At 29, Queen, Another One Bites the Dust, spent a week at number 7 in September, October of 1980. At 28, The Cure, A Forest, spent a week at 31 in May of 1980. That was their first single in the top 40. At 27, Devo, Whip It. Now, this is my rare exception. When I was doing this playlist, I didn't intend to do lots and lots of top 40s, so this was just a one-off. And I included this because I didn't realize that I was going to do an extras playlist. So it didn't actually enter the top 40. It spent a week at 51 in December of 1980, but I included it because I love it so much. At number 26, The Clash, London Calling, spent a week at number 11 in January. Now, here's another anomaly. This actually entered the charts in 1979, but as I said, I wasn't planning to do other years, and I really wanted to get this into my list. At number 25, Blondie, Atomic, spent 2 weeks at number 1 in March of 1980. At number 24, Adam and the Ants, Ant Music, spent 2 weeks at number 2 in January of 1981. Now, it did enter the UK top 40 in 1980, so that does count. At 23, Bob Marley and the Wailers, Could You Be Loved, spent 2 weeks at number 5 in July and August of 1980. And at 22, David Bowie, Fashion, spent 2 weeks at number 5 in November and December of 1980. At 21, The Corgis, Everybody's Gotta Learn Sometime, spent 2 weeks at number 5 in late June and early July 1980. Into the top 20. Number 20, Blondie, Call Me, spent a week at number 1 in April and May of 1980. At number 19, Adam and the Ants, Dog Eat Dog, spent a week at number 4 in November of 1980. At 18, The Police, So Lonely, spent a week at number 6 in March of 1980. It had been issued in 1978. But it did nothing, so it was reissued, along with a couple other songs from the first album, Roxanne and Can't Stand Losing You. 17, and they charted in 1979. 17, Cliff Richard, Carrie, spent a week at number 4 in February and March 1980. At number 16, Kate Bush, Army Dreamer spent a week at 16 in November of 1980. At 15, Boomtown Rats, Banana Republic spent a week at number 3 in December. At 14, Madness, Baggy Trousers spent 2 weeks at number 3 in October of 1980. At 13, UB40, Food for Thought, King, double A side, spent 2 weeks at number 4 in April and May of 1980. At number 12, Pretenders, Talk of the Town, spent a week at number 8 in April of 1980. And at 11, The Jam, Start, spent a week at number 1 in the first week of September in 1980, into the top 10. Number 10, Roxy Music, Same Old Scene, spent a week at number 12 in November of 1980. And at 9, Squeeze, Another Nail on My Heart, spent a week at number 17 in March and April. At number 8, Joe Jackson, It's Different for Girls, spent a week at number 5 as January became February. At number 7, The Jam, Going Underground, spent 3 weeks at number 1 for most of March 1980. 6, Madness, Embarrassment, spent 2 weeks at number 4 in December. At number 5, UB40, The Earth Dies Screaming, spent a week at number 10 in November and December. And at number 4, The Police, Don't Stand So Close to Me, spent 4 weeks at number 1 in September and October of 1980. At 3, Kate Bush, Babushka, spent a week at number 5 in August. At 2, Dexys Midnight Runners, Gino, spent 2 weeks at number 1. That was their first number 1. And that was May of 1980. And at number 1, David Bowie, Ashes to Ashes, spent 2 weeks at number 1 in the last 2 weeks of August. So that's my own personal top 40 of 1980. But there were so many great chart songs. I'm going to give you another 80 songs from 1980 right now. I'll take a deep breath. I'm not actually going to name every song. You can see the list on the screen right now, and you can pause it if you want to see in more detail. But the playlist for 80 songs from 1980 is available, of course, on Spotify, and there's a link in the description. So head on over there if you want to listen to it, and it's well worth listening to. It's a mixture of stuff, obviously, but all of the songs entered the UK Top 40 in 1980, but I didn't consider them good enough to get into my own personal Top 40 of 1980. Also, I don't like to have too many songs from one artist in the top 40. I made an exception in 1979 with The Police. I had 3 songs quite high, but I couldn't not have those 3 songs quite high because they were so damn good. And by now, on the screen, you're probably looking at another playlist. If not, then I'll pop it up right now. This is extras from 1980, so following on from the 70s where I had album tracks and non-charting singles. Same here for the 80s, but as I said earlier, it's a lot harder to find great music that didn't chart. As I mentioned earlier, reggae went downhill, Brazilian music went downhill, so they had their zenith in the 70s as far as I'm concerned. Also, I believe albums went downhill in the 80s, but singles seemed to go in an upwards direction. Anyway, we've all got our own opinions on that. So, there you go. All my playlists live on Spotify, Cosmo Jones, Feed Your Soul, and then the name of the show. There are hundreds of great playlists for you to listen to, and all my radio shows live on Mixcloud, and there's a link in the description to the overall channel. And all my videos live here, so subscribe here, like if you like, and let me know in the comments what songs you love from the 80s, what albums you love from the 80s. I'll be back tomorrow with all my playlists from 1981. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.